It's a great honor and a privilege to introduce Chaim Roet. We're here in your beautiful apartment in Yerushalayim. And Chaim, you are an icon. You are exceptionally special. You've spoken at the United Nations. Not only that, but your story, it resonates with so many people. And if you could just share a little bit about what you went through and the miracles and just the people that saved your life, if you could just share it with us, we're so grateful to you.
Okay, we are now 80 years later than when started the war. In Holland, it started in May 1940, not in September when Germany entered Poland, and the Dutch, they thought that the Germans would not enter Holland because in the First War they let Holland stay neutral, and so even they were not prepared for any, and they didn't believe that the German would enter Holland, so even they were not prepared. So in 4 days the German took over Holland. They bombarded Rotterdam, the second largest city in Holland, which was also the port, the most important port still today, one of the most important ports of Europe. And they killed many, about 4,000 people. And this indirectly has something to do with my story. So therefore I'm telling this. So I was a family of 6, from a religious family. My parents, 2 oldest daughters and sisters of mine, 2 elderly sisters of mine, and 4 boys who were the younger ones. And I was the youngest among them. And then the war started, and then as a youngster, the war started, I was nearly 8. So I can say that I immediately knew what was going to happen. I remember that also in Amsterdam there fell bombs and so, but not much more. And as a Jew, I went to a public school. That is quite interesting. Yes, that my parents were quite religious, but we went there to just a public school. And then we had to leave after a year and a half or something. The Germans slowly put in all sorts of regulations for Jews. And then I couldn't stay in school, in the public school, and went to a Hebrew school. It was about 1 hour walking from our place where we were staying. And we couldn't go also anymore by bicycle because it was not allowed, etc. So all sorts of restrictions were put in by the Germans, and in 1942 they started to take the people to the camps, first not in Amsterdam, but more in all the environments. What they always did, they started in the small cities, and then they came to the larger city. In Amsterdam, 10% of the population was Jewish. Of the 700,000, 70,000 were Jewish, and not that people were thinking, most of the Jews were poor ones. They lived in the ghetto, but the ghetto was an open ghetto, and in the ghetto It was an open ghetto where Dutch workers and Jewish workers were living together, and very well. I'm always telling that a few words still in Dutch, which actually come from Hebrew. One is jatten. From where komt jatten? From jat. To take something from somebody else. Or how is still today is not official name, but people speak about Mokum. Mokum is Amsterdam, the capital. Why Mokum? Hamakom. And so there was much contact between the Jews and the non-Jews, and also in, as I told my family, was very religious, or not religious now, is not Charedim, but in Holland they considered religious. But my father worked at a bank, and what I remember, we had Jewish friends and non-Jewish friends, and they came with us, and my parents went to them, and so what happened in the war after the behavior of the Dutch was very difficult to understand why they and part of the public, they participated in the police, participated in the razzias against Jews, and but so then we had to go from my grandfather. He was a parnas in the great synagogue. He was apparently, I don't know, but apparently well-known lawyer, and he was living also in a very nice house. And my grandmother passed away just before the war, but we didn't know then, luckily for her. And first he came to live with us, but then we came to live with him because he had a big house. And then we had to go to in different parts, in different stages. We had to go to a new ghetto that the Germans arranged for Jews, and area were from the workers' area, and that were very small apartments, and we were together, all the nine, my family and my parents and my grandfather. So we got two apartments, one near another. So one of the nights, just before Rosh Hashanah 1943, the Germans actually made the last razzia, and they came to the apartment of my two sisters and my grandpa and said, you have to be ready in 10 minutes time, and we are going to take you. And then so they had them by the veranda, they had a way to tell to my parents, be prepared, we will come also to you. And they came really to us and knocked on the door, and my parents decided not to open the door. But the Germans are very organized, so in the next morning they saw that they still had not our family, so they knocked on the door. And my mother knew German from school. In Holland you learn many languages at school, and she was apparently very fluently in German. She started to shout on the Germans, how they are there, I don't know exactly. And then we heard that one German said to the other, or one SS to the other, "Ich habe genug." Enough. I am tired. I don't want to deal with this shouting woman. So that is one of the, and then they closed the door. And then my parents made contact with the underground. Since my parents survived also the war, my two sisters not, and my grandparents not, and we had a very big family. My grandfather had 18 children, so we had a very large family, which I as a boy only knew, not many of them. And so most of them perished during the war. And my parents, to come back to my parents survived the war, but after the war, my three brothers also survived. Everybody was was hidden in one way or another. And but we never spoke with our parents about the Holocaust anymore after the war. So I don't know till today how was the contact between how did they make contact with the underground where there was no telephone. I don't know. They wanted for us to look forward and not to look behind what happened, and we didn't want, because of my two daughters and the grandpa, also to talk with them and so today I'm somewhat sorry that was part of the story, how I don't know. So then anyway, we two brothers of mine and I, apparently said only three they can take. We went to the railway station. We had to take off our coat, a Jewish star.
The yellow star.
The yellow star, and go with this woman, and we went walking to the station, to the rail stations, with this woman, and then we went. That apparently prepared some places in the eastern part of Holland. So we went with the train for 2 or 3 hours in the train, and then we all separated. From that point we separated all this, and so actually 1.5 years I didn't know anything about my parents. I didn't know anything about my brothers. And then there was a place which is called Nieuwlanden. And Nieuwlanden, many of the Protestant place, and many of the citizens were convinced by a very charismatic farmer to take up on Jewish people, especially children. And so many of this city, of this village, it's only a village, a rather small village, they took up on, they did hide, not everybody there, but did hide children, and also others. And among them was also a Jewish family who was hidden there, and he had a son at the age of 21, and he said to his parents, "I don't want to be hidden and not to do nothing. I'm going to help the underground to assist with hiding Jews." And then his father said to him, "You, with your black hair and with your nose?" And he said, "Yes." And then in the beginning they wanted, the underground didn't believe him. because he thought maybe he was put by the Gestapo, what also happened. And then on his own he found some addresses, and then from that point he was accepted, and he started to find also places for children to be, and for Jews, not only children, Jews and children, but many were children, but not only, to be to find a place where people were ready to hide them, but it was quite dangerous. Between quite dangerous and very dangerous. And for the Christians.
Chaim, what was his name?
What?
What was his name?
My name is also a story. My name was Henk and Hendrik, and how in a religious family did I come to one of the most regular Christian names. I had an uncle, an unmarried uncle, who we all very much liked, and he was called Yitzhak. And he wanted, I was on the number after my grandparents, or the names of my elder brothers. They wanted to give me the name of my uncle. I said no, he doesn't want me to suffer as he has suffered 100 years ago in the beginning of the 20th century. He had suffered at school, at the public school. They came from an Arab family, the public school, and of the name Isaac, and so he didn't want me to suffer. And then I had a very nice aunt, also murdered in Auschwitz, and my uncle also. And so they decided to call me after my aunt, Hendrika. So I got the name Hendrik. En zoals bij de wezen en ik dood. And I was the youngster, as I was saying. And so my other brothers, they want to make me angry, or had something done what they didn't like. They said, Hendrika, and I was not clever enough not to react, so I reacted. So that was a big simcha for them. And so I had this name, the Hendrik, and that was very easy for me later on, that they had to change the names. Many of the children had to change the names, and it's not easy. If you are called by a certain name, suddenly you have to, as a child, you have to react, and that is you that they are talking to. And I came with a family, and it happened that three children, two elderly already, and they were not at home. They worked in a hospital, but they came from time to time home. And a son who hated also Hendrik. And my story, and I'll start from the beginning, but many of the children who just came to another place, they would say, yes, their parents died at the bombardment in Rotterdam. And don't ask them, because they will tell you about their parents and so on and so on. And so I was also from Rotterdam, and Herstel, and I was a nephew from them, and because they was Hendrik and they was Hendrik, that was also Isa. He was not allowed to know that I was a Jewish. He was still too young, I was 15, 16 years, but he didn't rely upon him, maybe rightly so. And so then I was there, I went to school as a Christian boy. I went to church for a year and a half. It was also Protestant, a very Christian family.
What was the name of the family?
Desker. I have still a picture in my room of them.
And the name of the Jewish boy that also saved other Jews?
That was, that was Max Leons.
Max Leons.
Max Leons. And he had later on, he started from nothing, and he had set later up an insurance company, and with his with his sons going on now, and very, very successful, an agency, an insurance agency. He was a marvelous person. And so then I stayed there, went to school. Then in 1940, I came there in the end of 1943. In September 44, the new school year started, and it was one of the nice days in Holland. And the manager and the director of the school, all the 300 children of the neighborhood were there, and then he said, "Hank, tell your aunt there is no place for you at school." He was apparently, his thought was sissy. I came from a big city. I was also not too clever, so I don't know. He thought that I was Jewish, and I was with a bakery, small bakery, and the bakery was 150 meters from the school. So why didn't he tell them, don't send them to school? So, but anyway, it is a long story. So I came. I went working in the bakery, and it was a small village. So I went on the bicycle to distribute, to sell and distribute bread to the farmers. And so I brought my time through. I had nothing else to do. I was at that time 12. So after the war, then came the end of the war. You can tell the story for many, and also don't know it. I told you I don't believe so. This story is too important today. It was maybe important in the past. And then Holland. The Allied forces had problem to take over Holland. Maybe you remember this was a very well-known movie, One Bridge Too Far. They couldn't pass the Rhine, the river Rhine. So the southern part of Holland was liberated before, and the northern part was more than half a year later. And my parents and one of my brothers were lucky enough to be in the southern part, and two of my brothers and I were in the northern part. So we, in 45, the war ended. You know, at that time there was no phone contact. No telephone, certainly not in these areas. It was not for many years after that. And we didn't know anything, my parents. And then I had another family name. Other family name. I couldn't stay with my name, Roet, the Dutch name Roet. And I had Drees. And then it was a very, very nice family. By the way, the woman who was decisive in taking Jewish, actually they wanted a Jewish girl, and they came a Jewish boy. In the middle of the night, what could they do? They had 2-3 weeks before they said, yes, we are ready. but we would like to have a daughter, a girl. But then I came in the middle of the night, so what could he do? But she wanted, and she came from Germany. She was born in Germany. And she was very anti-fascist. And but I am also telling to the youngsters today, you cannot say, without her, I also would have been that. So then she used for one reason or other, she came back to my original name, and we had guests, and then they say, what did you say? They knew me another name, by Drees, and not by Roet. And say, Roet, there isn't two. In a small city nearby, we have seen a card of the Red Cross that the parents of Roet are looking for their children. And they had no idea. So we wrote them and again, it was also not allowed to go from northern part to southern part, because in the northern part there was hunger and there were all sorts of illnesses. You couldn't cross the Rhine. Finally, a story, but it's too long a story, that how we were smuggled. Okay, we in Nepal we went with an army car with a Jewish driver. My parents, who were, as I said, freed much before, liberated much before, they arranged, and it's also difficult for people to understand, for young people, and maybe also not for young people. They arranged on Friday evening to have a Shabbat. Atmosphere and some festivity, but to bring together for meals for the American soldiers, Jewish soldiers. They have 3 or 4 years, have it been, 2 years, 3 years, have never been at home, have only been, and there's no Jewish environment. And so there was an agreement between my parents that they will bring the food from the army, because there were food restrictions. And then my mother convinced one of the drivers, who was the army drivers, who could pass the river, the Rhine. And he happened to be the driver of the chief rabbi of the Dutch army. And he said, the army driver said to the rabbi, I promised Mr. Roet to take 2 of the children. We have to go somewhat. I cannot come back without them, and so I have to go somewhat another way. Another way was about 200 kilometers, because it was Amsterdam, and we were in the eastern part of Holland. Holland is not big, but still enough, especially at that time as the ways. So we came with the chief rabbi of the army. He had no choice. I think he also knew my parents, but I don't know. And so we came to my parents. Then the parents we came also by midnight or something. And then my mother told us that these 2 sisters and my grandpa were murdered in Auschwitz. Actually, my sister survived Auschwitz, but only 1 month afterwards he was in the hospital. And she wrote us still a card. It is difficult to read. Difficult, difficult because she already, her writing was difficult and also the content was difficult. But she said over how much they suffered, and she told about one of the sisters who, my elder sister was already passed away before. She knew exactly the day. She wrote down over my uncle, my uncle I was mentioning before, and my aunt, at what date they passed away. We believe that she wrote down the day, and it was very in a card, very difficult. We are still the card to read. That she wanted to say that we could say Kaddish. I think that is because otherwise we have. Why did she say the last card that she wrote with difficulty? And actually a few days before she passed away, or before she died. So then, okay, so then came we to our parents, and then we went later on from the southern part to the northern part. My father got back to work. He worked before. He was at one of the largest banks.
Can I just ask you, how was the when you met your parents, when you were reunited? Was it very emotional to see your parents again?
It was very emotional, yes, but it was especially my mother had a shaitel. And then after the war, she said, everybody has been seeing me with this shaitel. I don't anymore with a shaitel. She stayed religious. And then I came back after a year and a half, and the first time in my life I saw my mother without a shaitel.
Oh.
So in a way I got 1 second a shock. That is my mother. And but that's also part of the story also. So that is, yeah, for sure it was emotional, especially that my 2 sisters died. And partly because I was the youngest, they always took care of me, and then
And meeting your brothers, were they there as well?
Yes, one of my brothers came back together with me, with
and the other brother?
Another one was in the western part of Holland, who even I don't remember. One of the strange things also, and that I am also sorry, with my brothers, I didn't speak much about the war.
It's amazing.
Yes, and one of my brothers, he was hidden. The brother who was somewhat older than me. He was hidden with a man who hated Jews.
Oy.
But why? Because the priest had said you have to hide a Jew, a boy. But you can see, understand, a year and a half, how difficult it was. He hated Jews because he was a seller of vegetables, and somebody had him for $2 or something. A German Jew had not paid. And so he hated Jews, but and apparently had a very difficult time there. He was at that time, he was 13 years old, a very difficult time, and there was then also hunger in the western part of Holland. So, but I very little know about it. I know about it, and that he had a difficult time. And but he also didn't speak much about it or at all. And so then I went to, it was a special school for children who lost school year, so I went to a Jewish, not in the beginning, but in I went to a Jewish, what they called a Jewish school where you could gain a year of something over what you had lost. And then one of my brothers, already 46, he did leave. He went to Hachshara and he did leave for Israel. He didn't want to stay in Holland. And then my other brother, who had it difficult, in 48 went to Israel. And my elder brother wanted ook to go to Israel, but he still he was in insurance business, and he went to learn 1.5 year in England. So he came later with me. And then my brother who came to, the first one who came to him, he was in Mikveh Israel, and he fought in Yaffo and was hurt during the war. And then my mother came to visit him, and when she came back, she said to her husband, "We are going to Israel." Wow. It was not easy. You understand boers? You understand boers?
Yeah.
Dutch is a saying, oude bomen breng je niet over, oude bomen verplaats je niet. Elderly trees bring you niet over from one place to another. So my father had it very difficult here. Though he got a very good position with the Bank Lomé, but the Israelis were not so easy, and why he was actually the economic advisor of the president of the Bank Lomé. And why did you take a Jew from? Are we not good enough? So they made him much trouble. So later on, he went back to Israel and came back when he was retired again. And then, but he passed away a year later. And and for me, the position of my mother was a strong person, very likable but very strong. And for me, I was already at that time 15, 16 years, and I was all the time wondering what should I do. I also want to go to Israel, but to leave my parents alone in Holland, when I thought that they would stay in Holland. And but luckily they came here, so I hadn't this problem. And I came also, I finished the high school a few months later than they came to Israel. My mother grew up in a small city, maybe you know Alkmaar. Alkmaar is the place where they always sell on Friday, the cheese market, is a famous cheese. Very, very, very few Jews were there. And she had so many Christian friends, and she was very social. And as I told you also at the house of my parents, were non-Jews and non-Jews. And then after the war, my mother was so disappointed about the behavior of the Dutch people during the war. She couldn't understand why part of them participated in the destruction of the Jewish people. That she didn't want to stay in Holland, and she was very happy here till she passed away. And then I came to Israel, and then was in the kibbutz and etc. And then I went to study at the Hebrew University, economics, and I worked with the government, private, at the World Bank, and so that is my That's my. But I always somewhat, I don't know, because of the war, of not, or because of the Holocaust or not, I am also always social active. I had many suggestions and was working on many different projects, and most of them didn't succeed. But
many have succeeded.
The two succeeded. That is, to every person is a name, and that is because of the Nicolaeans. Because I was so angry. That I didn't tell you why. This village that I spoke about, that we were there, they were recognized by Yad Vashem, and there were also, actually there were three people: the farmer, very charismatic farmer who started it, but later went to the whole underground, to the national underground, and was in the end was he executed.
And his name, I think,
and then he passed it on to another.
And Chaim, his name, I think it was Post.
Johannes Post, yes.
Yeah.
Johannes Post, and then your name, and then he had an assistant, Arnold Douwes, and Arnold Douwes, this Nicolaeans went to Arnold Douwes, I want to help you. And then what they told you a story about the Gestapo. And then they worked together until the end of their life. They were friends. There were 15 years difference in age. But they stayed friends till the end of their life. Most one became 93, the other one 97. And and then in Yad Vashem, there are two villages recognized as villages. One is Chambon, and one is Chambon and one is Nieuwlanden. And there's a special plaque with 200 names still today of those in Nieuwlanden and the environment, actually in the end I did stay in Nieuwlanden, who rescued Jews, mainly children, but also other Jews, and the underground people who organized it. But there was one problem for me. There were two names. Not three names. Two names, Johannes Post and Arnold Douwes. Nico Leons, Max Leons, didn't appear. Why?
Because he was Jewish.
He's Jewish. And that made me angry, and then, but for one reason or other, and I don't Avner Shalev torpedoed it. I don't know why, still today I don't know why exactly. And he was a very strong person in the Yad Vashem, because there were others in Yad Vashem who supported the idea, and especially the head of the Department for Rights under the Nations, who became even a member of our committee, notwithstanding that his boss didn't like that. His boss was Avner Shalev, and he's still today, he's a member of the committee.
It's Jews saving Jews.
Jews saving Jews. Now, when I started with the thinking about it's such a long story. How did they come actually to onto everybody's name?
Because what happened, the Dutch government, they released two Nazis.
Yes, you know the story.
No, but if you could relate a little bit, and you were outraged when you heard that.
No, we are outraged. You know that I was known amongst a sort of troublemaker. So they asked me if I could organize a demonstration before the Dutch embassy, that they put free the two latest, the two who actually, and I don't know why they were not executed just after the war. The two were, one Austrian and one German, were responsible for not only them, but they were mainly responsible for the destruction of the Jewish people population in Holland. And so they were afraid, and they were put free by the government on Friday morning. Why on Friday morning? That the Jews could not get organized for some month. But anyway, we arranged a demonstration, and at that time I got good relations with the former, before Avner Shalev, the former head of the Rightous, and he agreed. At that time there were 34 books of all the names of the Jews who were murdered. That was, at that time there was not yet a computer, so it was done in 34 books, and I wrote them from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv to the demonstration before the embassy. And then the people started to look at the names, because there was not only the names when they were born, where they were murdered, and people started to cry. Because it's different. Peter, suddenly you see it much more before, not speaking, okay, he was murdered, but you see, and then a whole list of family and friends and so on. And then I thought, on the way back, why not to do it on Yom Shoah? Because speak about 6 million. 6 million doesn't say much. 6 million or 10,000.
It's hard to conceive even.
So, and then I was lucky enough to, also with the organization, I was the head of the second generation of Jewish survivors, and she also arranged with me this demonstration before the embassy, although she was no connection at all with Dutch. And I remember that on the way back, when I came from Tel Aviv after the demonstration to Jerusalem, and when I had this idea to do it on Yom HaShoah, and I called her, and she said, "Oh, I think this is bombastic." And then I said, to her, you know Billy was her name. I will do it with you or without you. And that was very nice said, but without her I wouldn't have succeeded as well, because he had connections with the chairman of the Knesset, and because he was working with the government, etc., etc. But that was a very nice thing for me. I will do it with you or without you. And we're very lucky also that the chairman of the head of the Knesset, he was himself a survivor of the Holocaust, and he immediately, and when started in the Knesset, then and how to come back to the story. who also later joined us in working. You can't do anything alone. You can start something alone, but you cannot anything. You have to have teamwork. So there was some heading till today. Yes, here the heading, the the World Neighborhood organization here in Jerusalem. I don't know if you know him, Alan Snyder. So he from that time, when he was young, and he had no connections, his parents had no connections directly with the Holocaust. He came from the United States. He worked together with with that, and also with Jews who rescued Jews. And after 8 or 10 years in the committee, he suggested that we ourselves our committee should recognize Jews who rescued Jews, to give them a certificate. I was even in the beginning, I didn't, and I was heading it, and we were working very much together. I said, if we start to do it, then we have no chance with Yad Vashem. But after I think after 2 years, I said, "You're right, we are going to do it." And since then, and it is all because of him, we have given 600 certificates. Unfortunately, and that still today makes me very angry, even if I'm not so alive. Okay, most of them are families, because most of those who rescued are not alive anymore, and very few are alive. And we missed this opportunity. Am Yisrael and Israel missed the opportunity to say thank you.
It's true, because they put their lives at risk.
You don't know what they were so dangerous to go. And for instance, the young fellow who rescued me, day to day, and he with his Jewish appearance, and enormous stories and how did rescue and what danger they were. Also the rights of the nations, or the underground, but also he, and maybe as a Jew even still more. But so we are giving in. This is a booklet, by the way. You can get 600 names that we have, and some stories about each of them, what they did. So that is in very much too long. But anyway, if you start, one start. And there's a long story.
There's a beautiful monument, the pillars that they have in the forest. It's a beautiful monument.
Yes, but it is. Most people don't know why. And you have to say, if you ask, and we have said, I am doing it today, even more than the other members of the, because I'm the oldest. I'm doing it only for the youth of today. It is not important that you know it, and it's not important that other Jews know it at our age. It is important that the youngsters today know about the solidarity that was there, because we won't change anymore Israel, but they have chance to change it, and that is by the way also for the Holocaust Museum today. And we had just a meeting, a Zoom meeting the day before yesterday. We have to understand, we don't understand, we as elderly people, We don't understand what is effective with the Jews. We think that we tell the story that is effective. We don't know. And we have no space, and that is also Yad Vashem. By the way, they also only maybe they tell the story how terrible it was. By the way, the student organization, they made an enquête, among the people, what they think about many subjects. One of the questions was asked, and do you think that a Holocaust can return and can happen again? And then they did it according to the ages. And then among the young people, 25% thought yes. Among the people above 65, only 15%. So that is, but did they learn something from it? And so therefore, what I taught to you that I don't know if my story is important.
It's very important.
You say it's important because of what happening is today, that we didn't learn the lesson. We didn't learn the lesson, and the lesson is not just to know what happened to the Jews, but how it can develop. And
so, Chaim, I want to thank you. I am so extremely grateful to you.
Okay.
You are, Chaim, I just have to mention, you are an inspiration.
Yes.
No, seriously, you are somebody that...
Please,
icon,
stop.
not only icon, but
please
really.
Stop.
You
I don't like that.
I am so grateful to you from the bottom of my heart. When I saw the address that you gave at the United Nations, it was unbelievable, and you do influence people, and whoever sees this, please God, they will learn that not only non-Jews but Jews also saved you, and you show karasa tov, you show gratitude, and it's so important, and your story resonates with everybody because it is such a human story, and not only human story. Look what you've achieved, and look how it is. There are no words, and I'm so grateful to you.
Please.
You should just have mazel bracha at Mevesrim, and I'm extremely grateful to you.
We assisted in it.
Well, exactly.
By not telling. And if we maybe didn't enough, but we did at least that.
There were many Jews that risked their own lives to save other Jews. Yeah, and you making people aware of it. It's true.
But I told you they started it 25 years ago. You know how quick went unto every person is a name? 4 months.
Wow.
And Jews who rescued Jews took 25 years ago. 20 was started 25 years without any reason. Only this is much too later now. But so anyway, Tachlis, for the future, I will send to you about music, because there's a future I have to think, not about the past.
And music is the universal language. It's
unbelievable. Everybody knows it. If you have
it speaks to the heart. It really does. It's negative pandemic. Okay.
Yeah. You have now products. Just now, I forgot. By different companies. But okay, what is if you compare it with music?
Yeah.
What would have happened if in some laboratory they found a wonderful product, but they did sell it, they didn't market it? That is with music. Yeah. It is a wonderful product for this and I was thinking, and I spoke at the Jobbelsiekronsvaart. There is the center, the government center for innovation here in Jerusalem, quite a big center. And I spoke with them and said, why is there so much innovation in the electronic field, in the technical field? There is no innovation in the social field. And people think in the social field, nothing to do about it. And that's, I think, also one of the reasons about music. All our effort is in technological development and economic development, but there's only a part of our life.
So true.
But I'm tachlis music. I will thank you, Terry, if you can, in South Africa, and if you get them interested, they can get in contact, because the proposition is that I actually see it as a world project, not only for Israel. But the student organization, they have to start somewhat, and they start here now this year with one big project, big festival. But it should be worldwide, because that is not especially Israel. That's nothing.
So true.
Music and
it's a universal language. Music is a universal language.
Only universal language.
It really is.
And about it.
That's racism. Yeah.
Talking. This I don't know much, but I learned somewhat from our professors. That is one part of your what is going on in your mind. Music is going to. I spoke too much, so I'm now starting to regashot. You know,
it's with the feelings and
feeling. The feeling is another part of you. So if you racism. It's not because it is logic to be too big, but it is in your feelings. Music speaks to your feelings. So why is all the talking from the president and the head of the army? It won't help, because they speak to you with this, and racism is not. Has no real basis. Maybe.
Chaim, nobody is ever born racist. Nobody is born racist. When we're born, it's something that is inculcated or it's taught by. But you're not born as a racist. No one is ever born as a racist.
No.
And you're right. Music. It's a wonderful thing what you said, and
I will send it. I will send it to you.
Wow, Chaim, thank you so much. So the one holding the hammer, he was.
Yes, the one holding the hammer.
What was his name?
What?
What was his name?
Yossi Rosenbaum.
And your family adopted him?
Yes.
He came from Germany?
He came from Germany.
And what happened to him?
He went. He was sent. They took in the beginning. They took young people, so-called, to work in Germany. And then at that time they didn't know exactly what would happen to them, because it was in the beginning with the first razzias. They called them to work. This not only here, also in other countries they did that. But he was sent to Mauthausen. And Mauthausen was one of the most terrible places, if you know about the story about Mauthausen. So he was
killed in the very beginning.
Yes, he was killed in the very beginning. Before. Oh, that is the same. That's the same. when there's some festivity.
So Chaim, this is a picture of your grandparents.
Yes. He was the father of my mother.
And your grandmother, she passed away before the war started.
1939, yes, before the war.
And is there a kever? There's a kever?
Yes, for my grandpa not, because he was
I know, but for your grandmother?
In Auschwitz. He was a puinhoud in the Ashkenazi the great synagogue in Amsterdam. Apparently he was very, very well known. And I remember that I could sit nearer to him, and also so nearer to him when I was a child of 4 or 5 years. And there was much honor in the big synagogue in Amsterdam. But it had one big disadvantage. You know, you couldn't talk, nothing. 3 hours had to sit. If I said something for a boy for 5 years, I was so yes. But he was a well-known advocate, a lawyer, apparently.
And this is a picture.
This is a picture, and I've also can send you a picture of the whole family. With my sisters.
So here your parents. And Chaim, where are you in the picture?
I am the youngest, the smallest one. Here now, in this picture, I am here. This was my eldest brother.
And they're your parents. And you have a picture of your wedding.
My brother is still very active in returning of what was stolen by the Germans. And this was the marriage with the parents of my and the parents of my wife.
And this is the family that you stayed with?
Yes.
And their names?
Deesker.
And you stayed with them
Antoni we Adelheid Adele Deesker. Antoni we Adelheid Deesker.
And they treated you very well when you stayed with them?
Very well, were lovely. They tried me to forget them, but it was always all the time dangerous for them, dangerous for me. And I knew that I couldn't rely upon the Dutch police, and not only on the Germans. And so it was very dangerous for them, especially, to have somebody a year and a half. And later on, they brought an elderly lady, very problematic lady. That's a story with on itself. And no, they were wonderful people, and they really took care of me.
And they were given righteous amongst the nations?
Yeah.
They were awarded righteous amongst the nations?
But much too late. They were not that is also it's maybe my fault. I was at that time the pastor already went in the 1970s, and I never 40 years I didn't dealt with the Holocaust. It just happened. It's again another story. I don't start how that Arnold Dawes, the non-Jew, came to live in Israel. He married a girl he rescued. Later on they separated, And then they made a festivity of that he became 75 here in Kidron, near Gadara. And then he asked me to stay a moment, and said, Hank, can you stay a moment? I said yes. And he said, that was, I want that all these people, that was before the people of Nieuwlanden were recognized. I wanted them to be recognized. He and Nicoleons, he said, they did much more than we did, what is not true. We did much more. And if it is not, and we went to Yad Vashem, and they said we have to collect the data, and we came back, it was 40 years later after the war already, we came back with the data and said, no, that is not enough. And then he said to me, Chaim, or Henk, if there's not arranged within a week, I take a box of benzene, and I put fire to my tree. I said, oh, Arnold, you are the right people. I work with the government or private. I know exactly the business around. I cannot promise you in 1 week, in 3 months. It took 3 years. But but since then I became involved. My children at a long time didn't know that I was in the Holocaust at all.
You never discussed it with your children?
Not later on, because then they become, not when my daughter came back from school, and there at 10 or 11 and thought, on the day of the Holocaust, I said, my mother, you know what happened in the Holocaust? I said, you don't know, your father was there. But so, and then so I was for, and therefore many things I don't. Okay, I tell you, there's many stories. In a long life, you have many stories. For instance, that he wanted, until today, if you go to the museum of the new museum of the Holocaust, the tree near the museum, you will see his name, Arnold Douwes.
Wow.
Most of the trees they've planted were planted to another. They had there, and then they were planted to another place because for the museum. But this is his tree stays, Arnold Douwes, still today. You can see when you're on the site of the Holocaust.
Chaim, can I ask you a very difficult question?
Yeah.
If the tables were turned, would you today endanger your family in order to save a non-Jew?
I'm afraid to think about it.
It's a very difficult question.
I am afraid to think, and I'm not sure at all that I would do it. Maybe I'm sure that I wouldn't have done it. But I'm asking myself this question sometimes. And I say, I don't know. You don't know till you're in such a situation, but I am afraid of not. I'm afraid not.
It's they were extraordinary. The people that saved you and this family, putting their lives and their families lives at stake. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, because you heard the story about my son being away from the school.
Yeah.
It was very dangerous. 300 children told, they came. He was not allowed to school. Why? That's one of the. Another story is that the Germans came. They came and they had some problem with their car, and they asked the farmer, where does live the woman, the German woman of the bakery, and then they had trouble with the car and they couldn't come, and in the meantime this man, the farmer, a good farmer, he came to us, to the family Desker, and said, we were there looking for you. And then we were sent in the field, this older lady and me too. But because it became dark, and so the Germans came fed up. Okay, let's forget it. You know, yeah, everybody who was rescued had so many times mazel that. But this question what you ask is really
it's a very
difficult question. I am not sure at all.
Chaim, thank you so much. I am so grateful to you.
You're welcome.